Hello everyone and welcome to EduTap. Today we are going to start this session for discussion of certain important MCQs that we can see in the upcoming ESIC Deputy Director Tier 1 exam. That is the first part, the recruitment test of the exam. And the questions that we are going to discuss today belong to the topic of freedom movement and Indian Union. And as we all know that we expect about 3 to 4 questions coming solely from this particular topic in our ESIC exam, right? So without any delay, let us start with the session today. But before that, I would like to request you that please subscribe our YouTube channel. If all the content that is available on this channel is helping you in your examination, is helping you stay motivated, is helping you in devising a strategy for any examination that you're preparing for, please do subscribe to our channel and also like this video if the MCQs that we are going to discuss, if they are also helpful in your preparation. In addition to this, you should also join our Telegram channel. All the sessions that we take on our YouTube channel here, the PDFs of this session is available absolutely free of cost on this Telegram channel. So you can come on this channel and not only ESIC exam but all other exams for which EduTap caters for, you can come and download the PDFs for those sessions, right? So with now let us talk about the 10 MCQs. The first question is now in front of your screen. One by one I will pose these questions in front of you and then we will discuss the answers, right? So question number 1 is in front of us. Among the following, who was the first to be the chairman of Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, that is CSIR? Now this question is a question from the subject of history, but also if you have a bit of a knowledge about the current affairs and a bit of knowledge about the organizational setup of CSIR, you can also answer this question without any hesitation, without any difficulty. The options available to us are Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, option B is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, option C Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and option D Lal Bahadur Shastri. So if we talk about the CSIR organization, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, this organization was set up before independence by the British administration. But when we got independence from the Britishers after 1947, the organizational setup of the organization, the CSIR, was changed and a provision was made that whoever will be the PM of India, the Prime Minister of India, he or she, the person, will be the ex officio chairman of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research also. So even today, the CSIR, its board is chaired by the Prime Minister of our country. So now it is very logical to find the answer for this question, because we know that the first Prime Minister of our country was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and therefore he also became the first chairman of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research after independence. Correct answer here is option B, right? Because if you look at the question very carefully, question says who among the following is the first to be the chairman, and I have told you that CSIR was set up before independence by the Britishers. Its name was different. It was not Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, it was Imperial Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, right? Because it was under the British administration. But after we got independence, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first PM of India, he officially became the chairman of the CSIR, right? So this is our question number 1. Now let us talk about the question number 2. Question number 2 is a multiple statement questions. We have been given 2 statements and we have to identify the correct statements. I have stressed it more than enough that whenever you see any such kinds of questions in the examination or in any kind of mock test where you have been given multiple statements and you have to identify the correct statements out of those, be very very careful what actually the question is asking for. If is the question is asking for correct statement, is the question asking for incorrect statements, you have to be very careful. You need not commit any such silly mistakes in these kinds of questions, right? So now let us read the question very carefully. Consider the following statements. When the decision to convene the first session of the Constituent Assembly was announced, the first session of the Constituent Assembly of India we are talking about here, right? Was announced. 2 statements are given. Dr. Sachidanand Sinha became the provisional president of the assembly, statement number 1, and statement 2 says the invitation letters to attend the assembly were issued by the Viceroy Lord Wavell. Now this question requires a comprehensive knowledge about the Constituent Assembly, how it was set up, why it was set up, when the first session of the assembly was held. All this information we have to be very aware about that, because the question, the topic in the examination is not only the freedom struggle of India but also the Indian Union. So we are not only talking about the freedom struggle but also the post-independence history, and especially the time periods from 1940s to 1970s. These are very very important for the examination, right? So the first session of the Constituent Assembly, it was convened in December 1946. Okay, so who was the president of the first session? The first session was presided over by a provisional president who was Dr. Sachidanand Sinha. This statement is absolutely correct. When the first session got convened, obviously when the session is when the Constituent Assembly first came into session, we needed a president, right, to preside over the session, to guide the proceedings. And Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, he was the first provisional president. He was appointed. Next, the first thing that Sachidanand Sinha did as president was to nominate Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the president of the Constituent Assembly. So we have read that Dr. Rajendra Prasad, he was the president of the Constituent Assembly. This is absolutely right. But he was nominated, or we can say he was elected by all the members of the Constituent Assembly. And before him, a provisional president, a temporary president was there, who was Dr. Sachidanand Sinha. Right. The second statement says the invitation letters to attend the assembly were issued by the Viceroy Lord Wavell. This statement is also correct. Actually, at that time, we know that the entire India was being ruled by Britishers, and the Governor General or the Viceroy, he was the highest official in Indian administration at that time, and he was the person who invited all the members of the Constituent Assembly. Right? He sent invitation letters to all the members who were part of the assembly. So both these statements are absolutely correct, and correct answer will be option C, both 1 and 2. Right? So if we talk about the examination, what UPSC can do, and UPSC is notorious for doing that, is they can change the small bits of information in the statement. What they will do, the invitation letters to attend the assembly were issued by issued by the Viceroy Lord Mountbatten. Right? They can change these kinds of information to confuse the aspirants, and you will think that yes, Constituent Assembly at that time Mountbatten was the Viceroy Governor General, but this is not true, because the Constituent Assembly, its first session was held in 1946, and Mountbatten came to India in 1947. Okay, so the correct answer of this question will be option C, and you have to be very careful with these small details in any kinds of multiple statement questions. Right? Now let us talk about the question number 3. Question number 3 says, in which year was the States Reorganization Act was passed by the Parliament of India? Now this is a fairly easy question, because we have read about the States Reorganization Commission and States Reorganization Act. This was the first comprehensive act passed by the Indian Parliament after independence to reorganize the different states and union territories which were there in India. So when was this act passed? 1953, 1954, 1955, 1956. The correct answer, as I might guess most of you have already answered, is option D, 1956. Right, 1956 is the correct answer. The complete name of the act itself is States Reorganization Act 1956, and in this act, large number of provisions were made. A large a large number of states, they were being reorganized. Their sizes, their territories, they were remerged and reshuffled. The states like Kerala, the states of Andhra Pradesh, the state of Bombay Presidency, they all came into existence after this particular act. Okay. Next up, let us talk about the question number 4. Question number 4 again has two statements and correct statements we have to identify here. Statement number 1 says, the first amendment to the Constitution of India was made in 1955. So the first amendment, we have to be very careful. In which year was the first amendment made? The second statement says, the first amendment to the Constitution of India made some changes in the articles 15, 19 and 31. To answer this question, first of all, we have to be aware about the first amendment to the Constitution, and we also must be aware about the different articles present in the Constitution. Okay, so the first amendment to the Constitution of India was made in the year 1951. Right? So 47 we got independence, in 1950 we got our constitution finalized, and in 1951 we amended the first amended the constitution for the first time. What was the amendment for? We had various provisions in the Constitution of India which were limiting the government in various spheres and its functioning. So we had to change some provisions of the Constitution. What were the provisions being changed? The second statement here is also correct. We amended the articles of 15, 19 and 31. Right? So only the second statement here is correct. The first statement is not correct. 1951 was the year when we amended the Constitution for the first time, and not 1955. What were the amendments that were made were in article, first of all, 15. Article 15 is about right to equality, right? And also it says that the state cannot discriminate amongst the citizens on the basis of race, caste, gender, etc. But this provision was also limiting the state from bringing out reservations from for certain communities which were socially or educationally backward. Nowadays we know that we have reservations and affirmative actions for different such kinds of communities, but at that time there was no such provision. The state was being asked for reservation, but but yes, there was Article 15, which was also limiting state from providing such kinds of reservations. So amendment was made in right to equality, so that states can grant certain benefits and privileges to these backward communities. Okay, first of all, then came Article 19. What was Article 19 for? Article 19 basically says that we have freedom of expression, and also we have freedom of profession, that we can profess any kind of job or any kind of activity, any kind of business that we want to do, right? The state did not want that. State wanted to put some restrictions on that, so therefore we also have restrictions on our freedom of speech. We cannot incite hate, we cannot incite violence. So there are reasonable restrictions, and these reasonable restrictions were put on by the first amendment of the constitution, correct? Next is Article 31. Article 31 is a right to property, right? Fundamental right to property. This article was later abolished entirely. So this again article was amended, so that we wanted to reform, zamindari. We wanted to abolish zamindari in certain places. We wanted to, redistribute land among landless peasants. And obviously this article right to property was limiting the government from snatching away the property of big zamindars. So this Article 15, 19 and 31, these three articles were amended, right? So I am not only trying here to give you the solutions, but also talk about certain contexts of the situations, so that if you are if you see these kinds of questions in the examination, you can also arrive at the answer, even if the questions are a bit differently worded, right? Next up, let us talk about the fifth question of the day. So this I have already told you, 1951 was the first amendment to the Constitution of India. And next is the question number 5. The question number 5 says, among the following presidents of India, who was also the Secretary General of non-aligned movement for some period? We have been given 4 former presidents of our country: Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, Varaha Venkatagiri, Gyani Jail Singh, and Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, Dr. S.D. Sharma. Out of these 4, only one president was also the Secretary General of non-aligned movement. Non-aligned movement was a political movement which started in 1960s, right? Not 1960s, even before that this movement was there, and this movement especially arose in response to the Cold War era, right, where the world was bifurcated into binaries of USSR and United States, and therefore many countries, they decided that they will not toe the line of any of the power blocks. They will remain neutral. They will not ally with the US, or they will not ally with the USSR. They will remain neutral, and they will pursue their own national interests. And India was also the founding member of the non-aligned movement. So the president who was also the Secretary General of non-aligned movement was Gyani Jail Singh. So correct answer here is option C. Right, even today the non-aligned movement is the largest international organization or grouping of nations after the United Nations. Although it is not much important, not much functional, we can say it does not hold much clout, because the large number of states which are part of the non-aligned movement, they have their own national interests. So that is why we cannot say this NAM is a very instrumental or very crucial in contemporary times. But at that time it was a very important organization. It helped shape the policy of anti-colonialism in that time, right? So a very important organization for that time, and for also our syllabus and our examination. Next up is question number 6. Question number 6 is again related to Indian freedom struggle. During the Indian freedom struggle, why did Rowlatt Act arouse popular indignation? We have read about Rowlatt Act a lot of times, and I have already asked you many questions about the Rowlatt Act in the previous sessions that we have discussed. As we know that this is the session where we are going discussing the 10 MCQs for the 10th time. So we have already discussed more than 100 questions for the syllabus of freedom movement and Indian Union. And Rowlatt Act, if we talk about, what was the reason? Why was Rowlatt Act not very popular? Why was Rowlatt Act inspiring the Indian masses to rebel against the Britishers? Options available to us are: option A, it curtailed the freedom of religion of Indians; option B, it suppressed the Indian traditional education; option C, it authorized the government to imprison people without trial; and option D, it curbed the trade union activities. The correct answer for this question is option C. It authorized the government to imprison people without trial. So such draconian provisions which were part of the Rowlatt Act, that obviously angered the Indian masses, and therefore the Indian masses, they rebelled against the Britishers, and then a series of events started. Even Jallianwala Bagh, it happened in Amritsar in 1919, and is also credited to this particular Rowlatt Act, right? Next up, 7th question is in front of you. 7th question again consists of 2 statements, and the correct statement we have to answer here. Statement 1 says, the discussions in the 3rd round table conference eventually led to the passing of Government of India Act of 1935. Now this is a very popular act or regulation which was enacted by the Britishers, and it was enacted after the discussions which happened in the third roundtable conference. Second statement says the Government of India Act of 35 provided for the establishment of an all India federation to be based on a union of the provinces of British India and the princely states. Both of these statements are actually correct. We know that the Britishers, they called for the roundtable conferences which were held in three stages. It was a single roundtable conference, but it was held in three stages, right? And after the third conference, between the Indian leaders and the British administrators, an agreement, we can say, was reached, and all the agreement which were reached, they were included in the Government of India Act of 1935. The 35 provision, the 35 Act, it envisaged an India which was a union of different states, princely states also, which were under the hereditary ruler, and also the provinces which were under the British India. So the correct answer for this question will be option C. Both first and second statements are correct, but we must be very clear that this provision of Government of India Act of 1935, an all India federation where there were different British provinces and also Indian princely states, it was never materialized, because by that time, large number of Indian masses, especially the Indian National Congress, they were not in favor of such kinds of cherries which were handed over by the Britishers. They wanted complete independence from the Britishers, right? So that is why this kinds of provisions, they were never materialized. Similarly, the Muslim League, it was not in favor of this kind of federation, because they feared that the rights of minorities, they would be curtailed in this kind of federation. The princely states, they were not at all interested in joining this, because they wanted to retain their own autonomy. Okay, so therefore the correct answer for this is option C, both 1 and 2. And then comes your question number 8. Question number 8 is about the Hindu College which was set up at Calcutta in collaboration with David Hare and Alexander Duff. Who of the following established the Hindu College at Calcutta? And this was the first college which was set up not by the British administration, but by the Indian leaders and also some Britishers who were sympathetic to the Indian cause, and which imparted the Indian education as well as English education to the masses. Correct options, the options available to us are Henry Louis Vivian Dorozio, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Keshav Chandra Sen, and Raja Ram Mohan Roy. All of these four personalities, they are very towering personalities, and they have worked for the spread of education amongst the Indian masses. Especially if we talk about Vidyasagar ji, he worked for the empowerment of girls and female education. He worked for that. The Bethune School is a very famous contribution that he has made for the upliftment of women and also their education. If we talk about Henry Louis Vivian Dorozio, he came in quite late. The Hindu College was set up initially. The Henry Louis Vivian Dorozio, he came quite late. He was also a revolutionary who inspired Indian students and Indian youth, to be very vocal about their demands and to rebel against the British rule. Keshav Chandra Sen, again, he was a very liberal kind of person who advocated for renouncement of ancient customs, derogatory customs and rituals. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy, we know he was a very enlightened personality and intellectual who advocated for reforms in our Indian traditional culture and religion. And the correct answer for this question is option D, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He, along with David Hare and Alexander Duff, established the Hindu College at Calcutta, which is now, we can say, one of the oldest existing colleges in India. This Hindu College is now known as Presidency University. Presidency University in Kolkata. And it is also one of the best ranking universities in India. If you look at the recent rankings which are brought out by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, this Presidency University in Calcutta, it is one of the top 50 universities in our country, right? Next up, the question number 9, the second last question of the day. We have been given 4 pairs, female leader and an organization which she has been associated with. There are 4 options given to us, and we have to identify the incorrectly matched option. So out of these 4, 3 options are correctly matched and one of them is incorrectly matched. Let us look at the options. Option A says Annie Besant was associated with Mahila Rashtriya Sangh. Sarojini Naidu was associated with Rashtriya Stree Sangh. Krishna Bai Rao was associated with Desh Sevika Sangh, and Basanti Devi was associated with Nari Karma Mandir. If we look at these kinds of questions in the examination, now I know that these kinds of questions will be difficult. We most of us aspirants, we do not have such in-depth knowledge that we can memorize all these minor details. But still, if these kinds of questions are there, we have to apply some kind of logic. in these options, the most probable option that you can think of is option A, Annie Besant. Because Annie Besant, she came to India in the first half of the 20th century. She worked for the Indian independence, primarily for the dominion rule, that is self-rule in India, right? So Annie Besant, she was very active for the Home Rule League. She was also associated with the Theosophical Society, but nowhere ever we have read that she was associated with any kind of indigenous movement or indigenous movement for led by the women. Correct answer for this question is obviously Annie Besant, who was not associated with Mahila Rashtriya Sangh. Mahila Rashtriya Sangh was first organization which was dedicated solely for popularizing the political unrest among the women, so that they can be more politically empowered, and it was started in 1928 by Latika Ghosh, right, upon the instigation of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So quite late, Annie Besant, she came, and she came in 1910, 1915s, and by 1928 the Mahila Rashtriya Sangh what was established by Latika Ghosh. Okay, so correct answer for this question is option A. Now friends, the last question of the day. The last question is about the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Again, a very important or very popular topic. We have discussed about this in the previous sessions also. Who among the following played an important role in the signing of the Gandhi-Irwin Pact? Three important leaders. The names of the leaders are available to us: Motilal Nehru ji, Tej Bahadur Sapru, and Madan Mohan Malviya ji. So there are three important leaders. If we know about Gandhi-Irwin Pact, we know that Gandhi-Irwin Pact was there in order to placate Gandhi, in order to persuade Gandhiji to come to the roundtable conferences and to call off his non-cooperation movement, right? So who was the leader very much instrumental in this? The correct answer for this question is Tej Bahadur Sapru. Tej Bahadur Sapru was the leader who mediated this particular pact. Gandhiji and Irwinji, they were brought together at the same table, and the Tej Bahadur Sapru, who was a very influential personality at that time, a very liberal personality of that time, and was respected both by Gandhiji and also by Irwin, right? So therefore Tej Bahadur Sapru was the person who mediated the Gandhi-Irwin Pact in 31. We know that Motilal Nehru, he was quite old by the time Gandhi-Irwin Pact came into place, and he was not very politically active. His son Jawaharlal Nehru was very much active, and not Motilal Nehru. Similarly, Madan Mohan Malviya, he was not in favor, and he was not at all in favor of the Britishers, and not at all with good terms with Irwin, the viceroy at that time. Therefore Madan Mohan Malviya is also not the answer. The correct answer here is Tej Bahadur Sapru only. Okay, so this is all for today's ESIC session, my friends, and I have discussed these 10 important MCQs, and in all, if we look at the previous sessions, we have discussed more than 100 MCQs from the topic of freedom struggle in Indian Union, right? And in these 100 MCQs, what we have done is we have revised very important topics, and I can surely say that in the examination, the questions that we are going to see from this particular topic, you can expect a large number of questions from the sessions that we have discussed, right? So with this, keep on the good work, keep on revising for the examination, keep on the hard work with consistency, and surely we will be touching success. Now let us conclude the session. Keep on reading, keep on growing, keep on learning. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.